Hello and welcome back to Building Wealth on the Go, a podcast by KLT Wealth Management. My name is Brad Wilson, financial advisor with KLT Wealth Management, and I'm once again joined by my team members, certified financial planner Joe Filiomeni and qualified associate financial planner Courtney Beach. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, 2020, and we are back with season 2, episode 4 of our podcast. In our last podcast, if you haven't checked it out yet, we did a big deep dive into the US election. We recorded about 3-4 days after the election, so things were settling down. So we talked a lot about our thoughts in that episode. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure to do so before today's episode, as we're going to kind of summarize our thoughts from the US election and move on to some market outlooks and some economic trends as we move in towards the end of the year. So firstly, let's discuss. There's a declared winner this time around that we're speaking, and some contention as we expected. But overall thoughts there, Courtney, on U.S. election so far.
Well, Trump's still fighting in the courts to contest some of it, but it doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. He does have the right, that is part of the American way, to fight things in court. But I think we can look forward to a new president, and it'll be interesting to see what gets pushed through and helps the market. There is an overwhelming feeling that a lot of green and ESG related stuff is going to get pushed through. So the market is reacting accordingly right now to that.
Yeah, sure.
I felt it was such a long, drawn out week, and it was interesting. The different medias were, some were announcing Biden as a winner way back when, and I was watching CNN, and they waited to the very last moment. I think on Saturday or Friday night that they finally, called it. But it just really dragged. So I felt it was a very interesting, time. We've never gone through something like that. I guess everybody wanted to get it right, and to make sure that things wouldn't get contested. But
I think CNN was being cautious. I was actually surprised to see that Fox News had declared Biden the winner well before CNN had.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely interesting. I think one of the big takeaways is the end results is nothing that we didn't expect after our last discussion, right? We all expected Biden to win based off of where the polls were at that point in time, and we did expect Trump to go at him with a lot of things. He's still tweeting out. I saw the other day that he won the election, and it's a little bit of nonsense kind of coming from that, like if you're going to contest it, do it properly and stop tweeting out, all these like just one-liners here and there trying to skew people in a different direction. But one of the big things I think we still need to watch is the Senate race, because the Senate race is going to have some runoff elections later this year, or I believe into next year, which will be determining factors on who controls the Senate. Because I think the Republicans are at 50 seats right now, and it's a race to 51. So are they going to secure that one that they need, or are we going to see the blue wave come much later than anticipated, but are we going to see it? So I think there's a couple big ones in Georgia that that are set to happen. So that's, I think, an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, the prediction is that both Republican senators will win, but you never know what will happen. We didn't think that some of the states that flipped to Democrat did, but they did. So
I think that's what the market is sort of anticipating too, is sort of that same status quo, I guess, between the Senate and the White House moving forward. And we've certainly seen the markets, with pretty steady growth, overall growth in the markets since the election.
Yeah, I think reaction has been positive from that front. So overall, that's been good. And I think I think that's a great spot to kind of, wrap up our thoughts from the elections. If either of you have any last points, feel free to add them in. Yeah,
I have one last point. I have noticed, and I've read a lot of articles in the last few days, that Trump has been trying to push people he likes into certain political positions as he's kind of going out the door. And I'm wondering how that will affect the policies that Biden and the new government will try to put in place to stimulate the economy going
Right.
forward in the new year.
Yeah, I hope,
Yeah.
calmer minds sort of prevail, and
Mm-hmm.
he allows for an easier transition, because obviously in this time, especially with the COVID and the virus situation and the general economic conditions that are happening, I think the U.S. needs to really pull together and act as one here moving forward.
Yeah, it would be nice to see a little less hostility between, the two, and just hopefully, whether it's a few weeks or a month or whatever, but when it comes time in the new year for transition of power to happen, that it is done relatively peacefully, because that is what not only the U.S. needs, but the world needs at this point. So it would be hopeful that is the outcome. But moving on from the U.S. election, I think one of the big things that has taken over headlines recently has been COVID-19. We've seen a dramatic ramp up of cases worldwide. If you look at charts, many countries are way above their highs that they had back in the spring. And it is pretty scary to see some of these numbers, like you're well over 100,000 cases a day in the US. And governments are trying to figure out a way to impose restrictions without having to go back to a full lockdown or full shutdown. And it's kind of managing right now to see, but I think we're entering what this is almost month 9 or month 8 or month 9 of the virus and all these restrictions. And so it's been a long time. It might even feel like it's been longer. I think for me it's felt like it's been longer, but yeah, what are thoughts on right now the coronavirus cases? I think some people are calling this a third, fourth wave. I don't even know what wave we're in anymore, but it's not good to see.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's really baffling as to where the case is coming from and how they pinpointing them. I like here in Ontario the way that they've kind of pinpointed to some degree, the hot spots. And their color-coded sort of system, which is good for everybody other than myself, who is colorblind, so that doesn't help me too much. But you definitely understand what's kind of going on, and I think obviously here in Ontario and pretty much everywhere else, they don't want to shut down. They don't want to go to a total shutdown, and but we are seeing even over in Europe where they are starting to shut down certain areas, some curfews and whatnot, trying to control the spread as much. But yeah, it just really baffles me is where the surge has come back and how it has started. Now, obviously, there's been many people against wearing masks. There was a rally just in Woodstock this past weekend, and I think they've been going throughout southwestern Ontario rallying against the masks and stuff. So is that's what's causing it? I don't know. So, but it just really baffling to me, and it's that fatigue is really setting in now, because we thought, well, maybe we're going to have a little bit of a reprieve here, and we've done what we could. We've social distanced and we've done what we can, throughout this period, and then all of a sudden, oh, now we got to do it again, and perhaps even more, and you're just you're really getting depressed over this and saying, oh my gosh. So I can see how people kind of give up on it, but we really can't. Obviously, we have to take this very, very seriously.
Yeah, and right now the Americans are looking to have their Thanksgiving, so we'll see how what that does to the numbers. And the rest, I mean, a good vast majority of the world do celebrate Christmas, so a lot of governments are looking towards Christmas and whether or not they're going to have to do lockdowns, whether they're going to restrict people, what they're going to do to stem, because we don't want to go into 2021 with raging COVID numbers.
No.
Right.
No.
Yeah, and you think of it too, New Year's Eve, right? Like of all the
Yeah.
celebrations, and I think to your point, Joe, I think the problem is the undercover gatherings, indoor gatherings of 20, 30, 40 people, right? And I think I think there is still an issue with some of the universities and the schools and gatherings there, you know, whether it's house parties or, you know, just outside at school with no masks on. I think, you know, there can be issues there, but you hit the nail on the head there, Courtney, with all these
Yeah.
big holidays, and
Yeah.
you know, December,
Kwanzaa,
yeah,
Hanukkah, I mean, they're all in
Diwali,
that
yeah.
time.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
it's going to be interesting to see, because a lot of those celebrations are all centered around family and friends and gatherings, and so it's going to be hard to, you know, for people to separate that. And I guess it's everyone's got to be, you know, maybe this is the one year we got to take off when it comes to, and just, you know, unfortunately not see everyone you want to see, or do everything you want to do, because you know, as much as, and we'll touch on this in a moment, we're hearing good vaccine news, the vaccine's not coming anytime
no.
soon. It is months away before any of us start getting even within the realm of being able to get the vaccine. So it's it's tough to see right now, but we have to keep doing our part.
Yeah, I have read articles that it might be possible that the vaccine starts rolling out at the end of the year, but that won't be for everyone. They'll probably start with people like for frontline workers and vulnerable people first before they get to, you know, everyone else. So that will be the question I have, or one of the unanswered questions in the market as well, is how they roll this out and how successful are they going to be in rolling it out? Because the success of the rollout of the vaccine and people accepting and actually taking the vaccine will have a big impact on the economy.
Absolutely. And I think
I don't know. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that you know, as we get into this vaccine talk, I think I'll mention the headlines that we've kind of seen over the last few days that you know, have led to some positive news, some good positive market sentiment, and so first was Pfizer came out with over 90% effective vaccine in the late stages of their final trials. They were looking for approval, and then as recent as today, we've heard that they've concluded it's 95% effective, and they're filing for emergency approval of the vaccine. We had Moderna come out recently as well, saying they were 95% effective, and we'll likely see them submit approval for emergency approval in the coming days. And we're supposed to hear from AstraZeneca and University of Oxford in the coming days as well. So all of that is good news. It's good to see that they are effective. You think of something like the flu vaccine is only usually 55% effective. So to have these at 95% effective is good. Of course, we don't know long-term health effects or side effects at this point, but I think what's positive, the Pfizer one was good news, but at the same time, they said that it had to be kept at minus 72 degrees or something like that, which for shipping and all these things and storing, it's extremely difficult, whereas the Moderna one can be refrigerated. So again, it's all those little details that we start to uncover as we get this news is important. It's exciting, but we also have to see, you know, what are the next steps and where is this going to go?
Yeah, that's sort of the light at the end of the tunnel. We finally be able to see a little bit of a glimpse of hope here with the announcements of the pharmaceutical companies. But you know, I think, you know, a lot of people are so negative about the rollout to it, and I don't think we're giving enough credit to our government. You know, to be able to roll this out on a timely sort of basis. I know on the news last night, it talked about sort of here in Canada how they're already you know, going to engage the military in order to help, you know, get the vaccine to certain areas and distribute it. So, you know, as much as like a lot of people that we talk to, and even clients, when we talk about sort of the fact that, you know, hey, we do have a vaccine that seems to be working and likely get approval within the next few weeks, they say, oh, it's going to take years to inoculate everybody and stuff like that. So they don't give enough credit, I feel. And I feel, you know, because this is on top of mind, that we need to have this happen. We need to get things going. And perhaps, you know, it doesn't mean that we all have to take it. Maybe it does need to, you know, ultimately start with, you know, the vulnerable the frontline workers and whatnot, so that we can get a certain percentage of the population inoculated, and from that point on, it's going to, decrease the chances of that virus mutating and
Yeah.
to grow.
I think my biggest concern is not necessarily, well, the government rolling it out. I think they do have the tools to do it. Will it be done successfully? We'll see. But I think my more concerned is the people who are anti-maskers. If they can't wear a mask, are they going to take this shot? I don't know. So that's where my concern comes in, I guess.
Yeah, but it has no difference to the people that don't take their flu shot either,
That's
right?
true.
And even now, I know the younger generation, things like measles and whatnot shots for
Chicken
your young
pox. Yeah.
children that are mandatory to go into the education system. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are opting out of that,
Mm-hmm.
where it was pretty standard and on my day that you just automatically got your kid with all these vaccines because
Mm-hmm.
it was proven and it was required in order to enter the school system. So
Right.
you're gonna have that, but I don't know what the percentage is of penetration that we actually need to have happening. But I think ultimately, once we get out there and start, providing the vaccine, I think it's certainly going to help suppress sort of the cases
Mm-hmm.
forward.
And once we suppress the cases, then we can start opening up some businesses that, have been really struggling through this. I mean, there has been some businesses that have done quite well through this, but then I don't know, every day this week, it seems like I hear another restaurant or another gym closing down. So it'll be good for them once we get moving.
I
Yeah.
think for me, the rollout, I think the government will do well on the rollout of the vaccine. It's just the production. If you need 2 doses, we're 7 billion people in this country, right, fighting over the vaccine doses. You need 14. Well, maybe not the younger kids all need them, but you're gonna need what, 12 million or 12 billion vaccines made, right? Like if everyone's gonna get vaccinated. So and I know some countries are probably going to be, first in line, and Canada's secured vaccines, but at the end of the day, that's a lot of vaccines to produce. So it's how quickly can they ramp that up? I have no concept of how quickly can they produce. Like, is it thousands a day, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands a day? Like, how many can they produce? Are they going to be working 24 hours a day? Like, that concept to me doesn't. I'm not sure of, and if they can do that, amazing. If they can pump out 14 billion vaccines over a couple months or something like that, that would be incredible, right? But it's that process to me where there's a bit of a question mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Pfizer has indicated that they can probably before the end of the year pump out a few million doses, and then in 2021 into the billions. That they can ramp up production and stuff. I'm not really worried about that. They can do that. They have the capability of going online to produce the required amount and stuff and get that vaccine out to as many places as possible. Plus there's all these other companies that are coming online, right? I think as you mentioned, there's 2 other companies that should be announcing pretty soon. I know there was a company in Canada that talked about their stage 2 trials, and that was going relatively well as well. So I think as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll start hearing from all these other companies as well. So it's to me, it's very positive. I'm the optimist in this, right? And stuff. So like I kind of look for that light at the end of the tunnel, and I hang on to that. And I think we need to have that.
You do have to consider, like you said earlier, Brad, we're on like month 8 or 9 here with the vaccine, with this virus. So these companies have had time to re-gear or get deals in place to manufacture the vaccine. So.
And I think that I've heard as well that when one company develops it, they'll pass it on to other companies to help develop it as well, to produce it, so that there is that mass production. I think there's an understanding that yes, they are first ones to get it, and they'll probably lose some profits, but for the greater good, they're going to, help get some resources elsewhere to help mass produce it. If they're the ones that work, or if there's 2 or 3, they mass produce those 2 or 3 across the board.
Yeah, because let's face it, whatever company or companies come out with the vaccine, they're going to be household names across the world for a while. So that's going to create some loyalty to their products.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So I
but
think that
could I just make a point here, like on the retooling? Like, I think beyond sort of the vaccine, I think we've a lot of companies have retooled, not only for masks, different types of masks that are out there, different types of cleaning product and sanitation products and stuff like that. It just amazes me at how these companies have quickly sort of pivoted and began, in the help of preventing the vaccine. So I think that's going to continue to ramp up throughout 2021, and that in combination with the vaccine should help for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think as we talk about this vaccine news, we look at, we kind of mentioned, Courtney mentioned it, positive news is in the marketplace or in the markets with the vaccine, and we've seen market sentiment going up. A lot of people are positive, have a good outlook for 2021. So there's a lot to be positive about, and we're seeing a bit of a shift in the markets. So Joe, do you want to kind of talk about what we're seeing that way in terms of moving towards more value in the markets?
Yeah, like it just overall the markets, with the announcement of Pfizer, that it just went up incredibly, like where the Dow is at the point of touching 30,000 points there. So you think about that and you think of where we were in March and how we've surpassed even where we came off on 2019. So obviously the market was looking for this positive news and moving forward, and we saw sort of an overall increase in the market. So that was really, really interesting, and we've talked about it in the past where throughout this COVID situation that the market has been growing, but it's been growing specifically in the tech sector. And we're looking at 45-55% of the stocks going up in the market, and the remaining amount still staying relatively low. And now all of a sudden we're seeing a movement where everything is kind of moving up, and we're getting into the not only the growth but the value type investments are beginning to start to increase in value. And from a technical point of view, if we look back historically, anytime we start seeing that type of overall broad movement in the market, typically within the 1, 3, and 9 month period, there's a 70% chance that we have positive markets. But beyond that, within sort of the 12-month period, it's 100% for sure of positive markets, and positive markets to the tune of double digits, 9, 10, 11% sort of returns. So this could be forecasting potentially, a very, very good 2021 moving forward in the markets. But yeah,
I think a lot of analysts are, some analysts are saying that this is the start of a new bull market. And we're entering into that cycle where we're about to see, there were a lot of value stocks. A lot of companies got hit really hard and didn't recover to the extent that you saw the household names of, as you said, the tech names like Apple and Microsoft and any sort of work from home. That's kind of been the model. People have called it the work from home stocks, right? Is it, any technologies or any consumables that are, digital. So we're seeing that shift now, and when we talk about value, it's all those companies that have a perceived discount on their current stock value relative to what the company is doing. And we've seen a lot of companies start to rebound, and I think a lot of investors are now saying, hey, there's an opportunity here with some more defensive stocks, maybe some financials, some utilities. So there's a lot of different sectors now that are seeing that ramp up, and I think they were the leading charge when it came to the market going up the last week or so. So it's interesting to see that shift, and now it's as you said, it's optimism moving forward. I was looking at a survey done with investors recently, and market sentiment's up 17% this week versus the previous week. So I think people are saying, you know what, yeah, this is good news. We're hearing all the vaccine news, which means next year we should be able to roll out some sort of vaccine, which means we should be heading into some opportunities, and there's still lots of stocks that are undervalued.
Yeah, that I think for clarification, just to for our listeners, in terms of the two sort of the categories of investments being growth orientated and value orientated, we talk a lot about that to clients, and it's not an easy concept, and it's kind of a blurred line as well. It's not clear cut in a lot of cases with many of the managers, but your growth orientated stocks are obviously your companies that are likely in the tech sector, and they're continually growing. They thrive on sort of low interest rates and low inflation rates, right? And these companies just, well, because they're probably borrowing a lot of money in order to kind of continue that growth into the markets. So then on the opposite side is your value type investments. And we have a number of managers that we use that are very strict value investors, where they look at a company and they basically say there's an intrinsic value there that's not been unlocked by the market. So then they anticipate that the value of that company is higher than what the market is currently pricing it at. And but it's a slow and steady and growing business and doing relatively well, but it just hasn't been unlocked into the actual market yet. So as we, if we put this in context, as we continue to grow, then it's likely that we're going to have increased growth, increased demand, because there's a lot of pent up demand. Well, with that will come inflation, supply demand, right? So inflation will start to hit us to some degree, and then the federal banks will step in with increased interest rates. So then you got your increased interest rates. So your growth oriented stocks won't grow as much. They won't be as shiny, because obviously if they're paying more on their debt, profit is less. And then on the value side, those companies that are really maybe debt free, then they will start to bloom. So you're going to start seeing that shift. And again, we've already started to see that in the overall markets with some of the investments that we hold. So.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting too, because a couple surveys that I was touching on is there's still a lot of cash on the sidelines as well.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people that are sitting on cash right now and not sure what to do with it. Maybe it's stuff that they would have spent on entertainment or dining out, and they're thinking about investing it now, or purchasing real estate, or just in general, people who have flocked to cash and haven't re-entered the market. So I think knowing that there's that cash on the sidelines is a good optimism as well as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think that is going to sort of continue to fuel the markets moving forward. And I think we should be clear that I don't think growth is going anywhere. I don't think the tech stocks are necessarily going to go down in value. But the question is, we're going to have to get to a point where our tech stocks, the value that the market has placed on the tech stocks, and then the eventual earnings that have to be reported at some point in time have to match. And so then that's where we'll get some price discrepancy likely into the new year. But we obviously know that tech is forever going to be with us here, so we have no issues that. But I think as sort of a point, in overall investing, is to kind of look at that barbell approach and having some growth orientated stuff in your portfolio, as well as some value orientated investments, so that you can kind of capture the market as it continues to go up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things too is some of the investments too, that they do a good balance. Like you said, Joe, some of the funds themselves are just a good balance. Some are heavily orientated. We've got strictly value managers, you said, and some that are heavily growth oriented. So I think it's absolutely true that balanced approach moving forward is really important. And one thing to note too, we always talk about tech, but a lot of these companies, that you might think of right off the bat as tech, or, your Amazons, or right off the bat. They're not necessarily all tech. And I think one of the big things, Amazon just came out as it's now a pharmaceuticals company in the States now too, right? You can get your prescription drugs from Amazon delivered right to your door. And if you're a Prime member, you can get them for free. So delivered to you for free. So I think you see players like that innovating in the marketplace, and they're dabbling into multiple different sectors. You think Amazon's in pretty much every sector almost now. When it comes to it, maybe they'll start producing cars soon. Who knows? But they're, it's those companies. When they say they're in tech, it's sometimes they're hard to categorize, right? Like where do you slide them in? We've got these traditional categorizations, and where do you put them? So it's a little difficult to do that.
That's the one thing about those big tech companies, is they are always innovating, and they're always coming up with some new what we think is a crazy idea, but then it turns out to be a great idea and makes a lot of money. So, and to your point earlier, Brad, there is a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines. Like, I just read an article this morning saying there's something like 170 billion just in Canada alone sitting on the sidelines between households and companies. There's been a lot of people who've been uncomfortable being in the market now. So will this, all of this stuff that's going on, will it trigger them to actually put it in the market? It could. And I could actually do that.
Yeah.
A lot of that tech stuff obviously is driven by the demographics too, right? And so perhaps for another topic, we should dive deeper into this, the Generation X, which is kind of being deemed as the most disruptive demographic, and really making lots of changes to the way that we're going to operate. So perhaps another sort of podcast that we can kind of dive a little deeper to see what the future does hold, and what are these I call them kids, but like what these kids are going to do, moving forward. So because that should be very interesting.
Because there's also everybody's talking about the millennial generation as well, but we've got the next generation after that, Generation Z, that's really demanding change. And how is that going to look for the future of companies?
Yeah. No, lots of great things to talk about, lots to watch in the markets as we move forward. But that's a great place to wrap up this episode of the podcast. We have the 11th episode of our socially responsible investment video series coming out on Thursday. So make sure to tune into that. It is on green energy and should you be investing in fossil fuels. So a great topic on this week's episode of that series. And stay tuned for our next podcast in a couple of weeks, and we will see you then.